Yes.
A blueprint for maximizing opportunities. I love it.
Thank you. Hi. I have 15 minutes, which in many ways is more difficult to prepare for than if I were to have like 30 minutes, because I have to think about how to get to the point quickly, which shouldn't be that hard given the topic, which is how to make the most out of any moment is really like the best way I can think of to describe what it is that I'm talking about. What I will say, and I hate when speakers do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. This is not my topic. So my very good friend and I were going to present together, and I said, well, what do you want to talk about? And he said, well, one of the themes of the conference is triumph, so let's talk about catastrophic success. And I was like, that's a really stupid topic, but with you, I will do it. And then he couldn't make it. And so catastrophic success, and it's not a stupid topic. I just like to give my friends a hard time. That's why I don't have very many of them. But first, let me tell you who I am, which I just learned how to do this. Let's see if, I'm gonna. Try the other side. Let me just use the old-fashioned way. I can hit enter. So Rebecca Lively, I started my career as an attorney. This is back when I used to know the answers to everything. If you've ever worked with an attorney, we are very sure that we know the right answer. And usually the right answer is very complicated and difficult to implement, and you guys are all just too lazy to do it. And so I spent a lot of time knowing everything, and this is what it looked like when I used to know everything. This has changed, in case you're wondering. I no longer know everything. But I thought, okay, well, I can't get my clients to do the things that I'd like them to do. Maybe I should just go and be the client, and then I'll do everything right. And so I left the JAG Corps in 2020, and I joined an adorable 240-person squadron of the biggest geeks and nerds in the entire Air Force called the 90th Cyberspace Operations Squadron. They write malware, essentially, for US Cybercom. I don't know why they hired a lawyer. Like, that is a different analysis for all of you guys to work through, but they did. And then I was there, and I went from knowing all the answers to knowing absolutely nothing, and this is what I looked like. So they're the cyber warriors, they're ninja themed, and so this is me trying to figure out what the hell is going on in this new organization. What I eventually figured out is that we needed to figure out, I think the first real question that we addressed when I got to the 90th is like, what is it that we're trying to achieve? And you can start at a very like obvious, easy level, like, oh, well, we would like to achieve, success in this mission. We'd like to deliver capabilities. We'd like to train airmen. But the deeper you get, at the end of the day, we're trying to secure the American way of life. We're trying to secure freedom and independence. Like, that's like big, deep thoughts, but it's also 100% what everybody in uniform is showing up to do every single day, for the most part. So what I realized is they don't need me to know all the answers for how to deliver cyber capabilities. They need me to help give them all of the tools. And so what I really ended up becoming was this ninja protector person who took all of the brilliant engineers, stuck them behind me, and every time the bureaucrats came through to audit what we were doing, I just kind of stood there and I was like, nope, friends are working. Like, y'all do you, and I'm gonna sit here and talk, or whatever. Protecting them from paperwork, from audits, sometimes from going to go be an exec, not always. I was not completely successful at that one. So you might think it looked like this. Those of you from the government know it actually looked slightly more like this. And that's where I spent like 3 really cool years. And then I did my own sort of internal reflection of, okay, like, ideally I should ask myself this every day. I don't, and probably none of you do either. But like, am I exactly where I need to be to best achieve the goals that we share? And the answer when I looked around at the 90th was that there were lots of other people there who could do exactly what it was that I was doing and who were ready to do it and who were ready to step up. And so I decided it was time to leave. And so I went and joined this company called Defense Unicorns, which is why I'm wearing all this great swag today, which is not really what I'm here to talk about other than I'm supposed to introduce myself, and now I've done it. So if you've just joined, you've missed literally nothing. Perfect timing. Thank you for being here. So what you may be asking is, what the hell is catastrophic success? And the first time, I think I've spent a lot of my life operating on the theory of catastrophic success, but not necessarily using that term. And I'm still not positive that it's a term that I like, so we can kind of war game that here today in the next few minutes. But the way I see it, and I go back to Sun Tzu, because why not? Like, isn't that what every talk is supposed to do, is like relate it back to Sun Tzu and show that literally nothing has changed in hundreds of years? And I admittedly didn't read this until very recently, which is kind of shameful but true. And I read it, I was like, oh, he's talking about catastrophic success. The idea in its simplest form, and the reason it's called catastrophic success, is the initial idea at least, is succeeding so far beyond your expectations and your plans that you get ahead of them. And so in the Army, what I've heard, Army people tell me I'm wrong, I probably am, but that's okay because I'm the speaker. Catastrophic success is the idea that you have advanced so far that your supply lines can't keep up, that your support infrastructure isn't there, but you're like kind of there hanging out. That's catastrophic because you're all gonna die. It's just you don't know it yet, and today it feels really good. That is not exactly what I mean when I say catastrophic success. What I'm really talking about is success so beyond what you could have expected going into something that you couldn't have properly planned for it unless you thought that big. So that's good catastrophic success, and that's what I'm talking about. I started this by saying 15 minutes isn't long enough, or isn't a very long time. But the catastrophic success story I want to tell is about when we had 10 minutes in the organization I came from with the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. So that's not long enough. We had a very broad topic of tool development, whatever that means. And we had very little direction on what the chief wanted and what really anyone in our chain of command wanted us to do other than, well, the chief's coming, do a briefing. Like, that's what you do. The DV comes, you show your slides. And so that was only 10 minutes. And as the day went on and the schedule got pushed and pushed and pushed, they said, okay, you're going to need to press. You're going to need to compress down to 5 minutes. So we're like, all right, so we're game planning. And we'd thought it through. We hadn't really started applying this catastrophic success principles yet. But we thought really, really big. We're like, what can we get out of this 10 minutes? Like, what do we need? What do we ask for? And so as we're waiting, and we're now like 2 hours behind schedule, my boss comes into my office and he goes, Rebecca, I feel like we should print out some materials for the Chief of Staff in case he asks for information about what it is we're asking for. And I said, dude, he's not going to ask you to give him printouts about like the policies that we would like him to implement at the Air Force level. It's not going to happen. That doesn't happen. So chill. This is my role in most relationships, actually. So we now have 3 minutes with the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. And he comes in, and we've prepped. And so I think that's really the first thing when I think about what is catastrophic success. How do you seize catastrophic success? And it's to prep the crap out of what you're doing, both from what is your organizational goal? And so, like, you've heard start with why, which I think is like the Simon Sinek-ism, there's an entire novel about it. But I like to say, like, start with why 5 times. So you don't just ask why once, you ask why until you understand the core of what you're trying to achieve and why. And then you do it again for the interaction you're about to have. So why is the Chief of Staff coming to San Antonio? And is it because he's bored and like kind of just wants to travel? Probably not. Is it because he doesn't have enough things to do? Probably not. So ideally, he and most people who come through and most interactions that you're going to have, you show up somewhere for a reason. You don't show up like for funsies. So why is he coming? Ideally to learn about the cyber mission. Ideally because he wants to help. So that's one big key. The second big key is everyone's just a person. So you might have like a bunch of stars on your chest, but like at the end of the day, like you get tired and you want to go home, or you get really bored because all these people are just talking and talking and talking and not saying anything. And so I think approaching people as humans is super important and something that was a key to achieving catastrophic success in this case. So now we only have 3 minutes. We're down to a very narrow window. And he comes in, and again, we've prepared both on, it was him and the Secretary of the Air Force, so, 2 fairly important dudes. We've prepared on recent speeches that they've given and the things that they're prioritizing. We've prepared on words that they use a lot to say. And again, this was totally overkill, I accept this. And so within 2 minutes, and I was not the one talking, which is my favorite part about life, is when I'm not the one talking. Within 2 minutes, they've kind of narrowed in on this topic of tool development. And what we got to when we asked the why, like what our core mission was to increase the quantity and quality of Title X operations. Why were we trying to do that? To achieve freedom and secure our way of life and all of those things. What did we need to do that? Was to retain the best hackers that the DoD can retain. And that's incredibly difficult to do. And so what we had actually done is come up with a list of 12 things that we wanted from the Chief of Staff of the Air Force and the Secretary of the Air Force to change about how we recruit and retain software developers in the Air Force. And we hadn't written them down on paper because, again, he wasn't going to, bite, but we were going to steer the conversation. And within 2 minutes of our 3-minute interaction, the chief of staff looked at my boss and he said, "Hey, have you written anything down on this that I can take with me?" And I swallowed my tongue and unfortunately recovered quickly, and the answer was, "No, but we would be happy to send you some." Long story short, this 3-minute interaction became 12 initiatives that the chief of staff personally took up to improve software developer quality of life. Not all of them were successful. 2 of them became laws, so that was pretty cool. 3 or 4 of them have actually come and been completely enacted. The tech track ended up coming not directly from that. I'm certain we are not the only ones who came up with the idea for the tech track, but a lot of the Air Force initiatives that have improved the quality of life have come from this. So why am I telling you this story? Why did I propose a talk about catastrophic success? What I've realized is that key to this is thinking about problems differently. And not in like let's all sit and think and, I don't know, pontificate sort of a way, but just looking at okay, what am I trying to achieve? What is the person who I'm talking to trying to achieve? Where's the overlap and how best can I exploit that? And so I did it as an exercise. Let me see where I'm doing with time. Doing great. I did it as an exercise coming in today, at least a little bit, of why am I going to HammerCon? What is the best thing that can happen from this talk? And that's the part I missed, so I'm doing great here. The part I missed about catastrophic success is you have to think really, 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 really big. And you have to be prepared to fail because you are asking for far more than is reasonable out of a 2 or 3 minute interaction. And so thinking really, really, really big about what could I achieve out of HammerCon? What can I achieve out of this talk right now? And the reason I'm going to share what I came up with as my 3 things that I could get out of this talk, one is because if I speak them into reality, then they're going to happen. I'm going to walk out the door and you guys are going to be like, yes, I'm going to give you these 3 things. But honestly, the biggest reason I want to share my 3 things is because they are so ludicrously over the top ridiculous that this is what I'm trying to say about how big you should think. Because if every time, every meeting, every engagement I go into, I'm thinking this big, and 1 out of 100 times it pans out, I'm going to be really freaking happy. So here's my 3 things. I'll give you my first 2. I would like to write a book on catastrophic success. And so this is me in my current getup with my book on catastrophic success. I'm not quite sure how it's going to happen, but I would like to leave with fistfuls of cash. Again, there's many ways that could happen. I've thought of multiple paths, but fistfuls of cash. And then the last, and this is the most exciting one to me personally. I would like to secure my personal future. There we go, I went too fast. As the first secretary of the US Cyber Force. And so this is me at my desk. I might need to put on a suit, but I don't know. This might just be the dress code, hacker casual. So I say all of this because I'm not going to get any of this walking out of here. Or maybe I am. Literally, maybe one of you just heard me say this and it's going to plant a seed. And then you're going to follow up with my contact information right here. And you're either going to give me fistfuls of cash or a book deal, or you're going to help me stand up the US Cyber Force. These are all options that are available. So please, hit me up on LinkedIn. When we've applied this way of thinking, especially where you look for the overlap between what are your goals, what are the other people's goals, and then you think really freaking hard about it, way harder than you would have ever expected. We've had that engagement. We've turned a conversation we weren't even necessarily supposed to be part of into a few new laws that ended up in the National Defense Authorization Act. We've entered into conversations we never would have expected with people who we never would have planned to talk to, and then we've gotten results from that. The biggest reason I pitch this is the theme of triumph. In the cyber community, we are a bunch of pessimistic a-holes. I am a pessimistic a-hole. That is what I do. That's pretty much my whole shtick, to be completely honest. And then I saw the theme for this event, and it's talent, something, something, and triumph. And I'm like, ooh, we never talk about triumph. And a lot of times we can't talk about the triumphs that we have in our community. So this is a topic. It's easy to talk about winning. It's easy to talk about how to win. It's easy to talk about how to think and plan for winning. And then again, because to do this well, you should be failing 99% of the time, I can go back to my pessimistic a-hole way and be like, yeah, but you're going to fail. But again, succeed 1% of the time and you're good. So that is my 15 minutes. Hit me up if you have any questions. And that's all I got.
Give Rebecca a round of applause.